Hello, everyone. What are we starting with, the meditation or the talk? Let's start.
Pulling up your PowerPoint right now.
Let's start with the talk.
Okay.
It's not on the PowerPoint, but I promised that I would get back to you about the last talk I did, which was finding the wellspring of love. And I ask you all to take the challenge to spend 20 minutes a day over the last month. You actually had about 35 days to do 30 days, to spend 20 minutes a day quieting yourself and waiting on Source. And I know some of you in the room took that challenge. You signed up, and I sent you an email a few days ago. And I asked if anyone was willing to share anything that they experienced from that challenge. So, anyone care to share? Debbie.
Well, with my experience, I was already doing a morning meditation for as much time as Spirit wanted me to donate to that. Sometimes it could be 45 minutes, sometimes it was an hour and 10 minutes. There's no time limit, but doing this and applying more intention, I guess, I feel like I've gotten to a deeper level of just, sometimes there's just no words to put on that. It's more of an emotion and a feeling, but it brought me to just a deeper level of consciousness and just tranquility, I guess, is the only word I can put on it.
Beautiful.
So thank you for it. Thank you for that. It's a wonderful practice, and I'm going to continue doing that.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Anyone else care to share? Yes, Christina.
I also have a daily practice, and I would echo exactly what Debbie said. Reverend Tori used to call it a quickening. I just have felt more of a connection as I put more intention behind my meditating with Source, with Spirit, and just felt an overwhelming amount of love around me and in every bit of what I go through every day.
Beautiful, beautiful. Yeah. So I'd invite you to either continue or begin with that 20 minutes or longer or shorter if you need to. I actually hit right at 30 in my practice, and for me, part of the product or the outcome is this talk today. Some of this information came to me during my meditation. I also had an experience that I could only describe as kind of a Kundalini energy. I don't know those of you that do yoga, but it just felt like this influx of love into my physical being, and just, kind of made me shiver. So not every time, sometimes I had to work extra to fight my mind to quiet it down, but it seemed to come more frequently. So I'd recommend it to all of you to try it out and see, or to continue and let it deepen. So today I want to talk to you about our vessels. We each are a vessel. We're each a container that we get to decide what to pour into, what to take out of, how to manage our vessels. And so I want to talk about the fact that each one of us is wonderfully and fearfully made. We are created as beautiful beings, as expressions of the God energy, of the love energy. And so as that type of creation, it's our responsibility to honor that vessel and to protect it and to use it wisely. Whoops. So the background of this talk is about quantum physics and systems theory. Quantum physics tells us that everything is energy. Everything. That everything that we've ever seen in the world is created out of energy. Systems theory is a different type of theory that many of us don't have as much familiarity with, but we consider any kind of living organism to be an open system. There's inputs from outside of the system, there's outputs from the system. And so, you know, as long as we're alive, one of the ways that we can tell that we're alive is we're inputting our breath, bringing our breath in, and exhaling is a way for output. So when we are alive, we are an open system, meaning that there are energies coming in, there are energies leaving us. And so this collection of what you would call you, what you identify as you, is just a collection of energy that, you know, it's often kind of confusing about all the different aspects of this very intricate system that that's been created and that we say is us. So when we look at energy coming into the system that you identify as you, the energy that comes from without the system into your system has an interaction. There's no energy that comes into your system that does not interact with what's in your system. So let me give you an example, pretty simple example. Most of you that have heard my talks before know that what one of my favorite foods is. Well, I'm going to input into your system the label for that food and notice your reaction. Pizza. All right? Everybody has a reaction to pizza, right? Some people like it, some people don't. Some people, when they see the word pizza, it creates an image in your mind. For some of us, like me, I love pizza, so I just see the word and start salivating. Right? Pizza's good. I like pizza. So that's one input into your system that I just put into your system, and it interacted with all of your experiences of pizza, the level of hunger that you have right now, your thoughts about where you would get good pizza, all of that's interacting right now, just with that 5-letter word. Now, that's one type of input. If I do another type of input, visual, that's going to engage a whole nother part of your brain, right? So I know that for Christine, this would be a really attractive piece of pizza because she likes cheese pizza. I don't like pizza that simple. I'll eat it if I need to, but you know, I like the more complicated combinations. So this one wouldn't react to my system in the same way that it would react to her system. So we all have inputs all the time that interact with our system in this open system. So how do we get a handle on this complex interaction stuff that's going on all the time? We're always getting input, we're always having interactions, we're always having output. Well, one way that seems to simplify it for me is to look at this collection of energy that I call me, or your collection of energy, is to break it into 4 different categories. They're artificial because they all interact and they're hard to divide up. But let's just use a microscope for a minute and put them into different categories, and then we'll pull back and look at the whole scene again. So we have a physical energy body that is, you know, the boundary is your skin, and we're all pretty familiar with that. In this system, we also have an emotional energy body, a part of our collection of energy that responds to outside stimuli or inside stimuli. And then we have an intellectual energy body. That's our thoughts and our ideas and the way we process things, our rational brain. And then I believe we have a spiritual energy body. And that's where our beliefs reside and where we make meaning of the world. And so each of those energy bodies are part of a collective of you, of who you are. And they interact with each other. So a visual, this is from my new book that's hopefully going to be out this year. Physical energy body, emotional energy body, intellectual energy body, and spiritual energy body. This is a visual that, from my perspective, when we're in balance, the energy bodies are about those different sizes. So our spiritual energy body, when we're in balance, is the largest. Our intellectual is a little smaller. Our emotional is a little smaller. And our physical is the physical body that we have. So let's examine those just a little bit closer. Let's first talk about our physical energy body. The wonderful thing about living in today's age is we've done so much research on all kinds of stuff, particularly the human body. We know a whole lot more about the human body than we knew 100 years ago. One of the things we know about the human body is we're learning what's called the pleasure cascade circuit. There's several parts of our brain that interact together to give us a sense of pleasure. And the one that I put up here is the nucleus accumbens, but that's one of like 5 or 6 different parts of our brain that work together to create a sense of pleasure or a sense of pain. So this is where we process pleasure. It has neurotransmitters that include dopamine and serotonin and GABA, and they've researched there are about up to 25 different neurotransmitters that affect the pleasure circuit. So this is critical to our existence, because imagine how you would have to manage your life if you never got hungry. Because that's part of the pleasure circuit. It activates our sense of needing food, our sense of needing water, our sense of being cold or hot. It helps us to stay alive. So it's essential to our well-being to have this pleasure circuit. So the second energy body, the emotional energy body, is in part driven by a particular part of the midbrain called the amygdala. And there's a common phrase called an amygdala hijack, and I will guarantee you that everybody in this room has had an amygdala hijack. That's where your emotions take over and your rational brain shuts down and you just react to whatever that input is with your emotional brain. Anybody not have that experience? Okay, I put my hand up, but I've had it. Yeah, I have it quite often. So this part of our brain is what keeps us out of danger, what keeps us safe. And so it is not just physical danger. A few thousand years ago, it'd be mainly physical danger, but today we've started using our amygdalas for other types of danger, emotional danger, or relationship danger. This is the part of your brain that activates when somebody's unfaithful to you, or something's happened that is not that is not what you expect to happen in the world. So your amygdala gets hijacked, and your body releases all of these different hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, all of these different chemicals will activate your body and go into fight or flight. So that's the emotional part of our brain, or our energy body. Next, we have the intellectual energy body. That's mainly driven by the cerebral cortex, the part of our brain that sits on top of our midbrain and brain stem. This is where our thinking occurs, where our rational brain is. This is also the locus on one of the temporal sides is our social brain. So we can look at people, and I can look at you all and see, okay, well, a couple of you are interested, a couple of you are kind of falling asleep. You know, that's my social brain analyzing input, right? The visual input. So the intellectual part of our brain is what processes all of the information. And so lastly, we have the spiritual energy body. My belief is that the heart is the center of our spiritual energy body. It's not located in our head at all. Our head does a lot of work for a lot of good to keep us safe and fed and all of that. But it's really our heart that has that connection to source, where we get meaning in the world. And the research has shown that our hearts have an electromagnetic field 10 times greater than our brain. And so we can sense all kinds of things with our heart. So that's kind of the overlay of the four energy bodies. Let's talk a little bit about how they interact. Anybody had their physical energy body take over their decision making? Yeah, most of us have, yeah. So let me give you an example. Yesterday I had this beautiful Reiki training, Reiki level 2 training. I left the training feeling wonderful and connected and balanced. And on my way home, I started thinking, well, what am I going to have for dinner? Right? And so I got home, and I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to take the time to stop at the grocery store. So I pulled out some chicken wings from Costco and heated those up. I thought, well, that sounds good. My physical body was taking over my decision making. I already knew this bag was almost empty. I already knew that I wasn't really crazy about these wings. But I got into my mind that that's what I wanted. And after I ate them, oh man, I felt horrible. In fact, when I got up this morning, I thought I was getting a cold because I had a sinus reaction to this garbage that I ate. Right? So my physical energy body took over and made a decision that my consciousness should have said, no, that's not a good idea. Right? So we've all done that. And we can give examples of the emotional energy body taking over, the intellectual energy body taking over. You know, all three of those take us down a wrong path. So if we could sit together and talk about it, then I'm sure that each of you could give an example of how your lower vibration or more dense energy bodies sometimes take over and make your decisions for you. And what I'd like to propose is that we have been designed by the creative force of the universe to have our consciousness be in charge of our vessel. Our consciousness is the part of us that's supposed to be in charge, that's supposed to be calling the shots, making the decisions. And there's two different aspects of this consciousness in charge that I want to talk briefly about. First of all, our consciousness when we're functioning properly is a gatekeeper. Our consciousness decides whether or not to take in energy, whether it's physical energy, emotional energy, intellectual energy. We get our consciousness as gatekeeper saying, no, I'm not going to do that. For example, many of my friends are really focusing on their food intake and what they're taking into their body. In fact, one of my friends says, if I look at a box and it has something I can't pronounce as an ingredient, I don't eat it, right? That's a great kind of, bottom line to use. So their consciousness then becomes the gatekeeper for what comes into our body. And we can do that emotionally, we can do that intellectually. Just say, I'm not going to entertain that. The other aspect of our consciousness in charge is as the janitor. We all need a janitor. At least I do. Maybe you guys don't, but I need a janitor that when I find something in my energetic body that is no longer useful for me, I need them to sweep it up and get it out, right? To move it on out. So when our consciousness is working as it should, we have our consciousness being the gatekeeper to not allow lower vibration energy in, and as janitor to clear out anything that either came in real recently, or something that's been there for a long time. You can still clean that out. So let's look at how our consciousness can be a gatekeeper and a janitor in each of our energy bodies. So in our physical energy body, consciousness as gatekeeper helps me choose what I eat or drink, or what physical experiences I allow my body to have, right? Consciousness as janitor in our physical body helps to clear any toxins. Part of my process this morning, I'm feeling incredibly better than I felt when I got up this morning. Part of it was using my consciousness to assess what got off. Why am I feeling so lousy? And I helped clear it out. It's gone. So any limitations on physical potential you can clear out with your consciousness. It may be that you've decided that you want to run, but you don't think you're a good runner. That's a consciousness as janitor to clear it out and make that happen for yourself. So then the emotional energy body, consciousness as gatekeeper, regulates the frequency and intensity of emotional input into my system. So as many of you know, I'm a psychotherapist and do spirituality work. I've got to regulate sometimes the intensity of the input that I get from my clients. I do co-parenting work, so I don't know why I signed up for this, but I get judges that put in their order that the husband and wife are supposed to come to me to learn to get along for their kids during a divorce. And let me tell you, that's intense work. And I realized 2 weeks ago when I had 5 of those in 1 week, no, that's way too much input. So I use my consciousness to back that off and to schedule things differently. So we get to decide as gatekeepers what we allow into our energetic, emotional energy body. Consciousness as janitor, what this does is it provides a triangulation of data. That's a scientific term. That's where instead of 2 points of data where you don't know which one is true, you get a third point of data, and then you can look at it you can triangulate that data and say this one's correct and this one's in error. And that's what we can do with our consciousness to determine if our emotional reaction is real, is for real danger or just perceived danger. So we can, work through any types of perceived danger that, we've all gotten upset about something that wasn't real, right? So, intellectual energy body, consciousness as gatekeeper, helps me to choose what I think about. We get to choose what we think about and what we invest our brain energy in. We make that decision all the time. And, we can let one thought run away with us and spend way too much time on something we don't need to spend time on. But consciousness as gatekeeper in our intellectual energy body can keep that in check. And consciousness as janitor in our intellectual energy body, it helps clear up erroneous thinking and establish healthy thinking patterns. As janitor in the spiritual energy body, we've all had limiting beliefs that aren't really an accurate representation of how the world works. So it helps to clear out those limiting beliefs and bring us to a place where we open and are in awe of what this world is. So Charles Fillmore actually had a quote from about consciousness as janitor. We must learn to let go, to give up, to make room for the things we have prayed for and desired. That's clearing out all the old stuff so we can be present for the new influx from Spirit. And it's funny, when I was researching this for this talk, I first started with a different quote that is one of my favorite quotes by Joseph Campbell, which is, we must be willing to get rid of the life we've planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. Same thing, right? Well, as a writer, I like to kind of make sure that I've attributed quotes to the right people. And so there's this website called Quote Investigator. And so I went to Quote Investigator for Joseph Campbell's quote, and they had a big argument in this write-up about whether Joseph Campbell came up with this or I think it was Huxley. And they were, looking at when it first appeared in print and all of this stuff. Well, Charles Fillmore said it probably 100 years before Joseph Campbell did, but he didn't happen to be in that quote investigator. So to wrap up, let me also give you an example of how Jesus talked about this, because there's been a parable that he had that always puzzled me. And when I read this parable through the lens of what I presented today, it made perfect sense. And you probably are familiar with it if you've been raised in the church, in particularly Christian churches. The parable of the 10 maidens or 10 virgins. And I'm going to read it to you and see if you can discern what he was actually, the metaphysics of what he was actually saying. Then the kingdom of heaven shall be compared to 10 maidens who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish and 5 were wise. But when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all slumbered and slept. But at midnight there was a cry, "Behold, the bridegroom, come out to see him." Then all those maidens rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, "Give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out." But the wise replied, "Perhaps there will not be enough for us and for you. Go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves." And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and those who were ready went in with him to the marriage feast, and the door was shut. Afterward, the other maidens came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he replied, Truly, I say to you, I do not know you. So, the way that I can see this as an interpretation in the metaphysics is that the 5 that brought oil represents their work to be ready to be in relationship with Source. The things that you are doing in your meditation, in getting quiet so that you can hear Source whisper in your ear. They worked at something, anticipating something that was not yet manifest. The bridegroom wasn't there. The awakening wasn't there. But they knew that it was coming, and so they got ready for it. The others didn't have enough oil. They didn't invest in their spiritual practice. And so when the awakening came, that's the bridegroom coming, and the party began, the marriage feast, that sense of peace that passes all understanding, they were locked out. They hadn't done the work that they needed to do to prepare themselves for that new awakening, for that new expansion into the connection with everything, the relationship. So, in the Old Testament, we have a beautiful passage that's often quoted. But now, O Lord, you are our Father, and we are the clay, and you are our potter, and all of us are the work of your hand. We are the vessels that were created by the creative force of the universe. Our job is to make that vessel ready and able to receive the abundant love that is always pouring down over us. And as one of my favorite poets would put it, Rumi, in my ear love murmurs, my soul has fainted. All colors melt in love's transparent sky. I am only an empty cup. So let's take that into meditation. So I'd invite you to get comfortable in your seats. Either close your eyes or soften your gaze. Check in with your physical body and make sure it's in a comfortable place to maintain its posture where it is now. Take a moment and connect with your breath, feeling the inflow of air into your lungs, bringing oxygen into your body. Feel the outflow of air out of your lungs, releasing carbon dioxide. And as we grow quiet, I'd like for you to imagine with me sitting in front of you as a vessel. Perhaps it's a glass or a cup or a pitcher or a chalice. And as you look at that vessel in your mind's eye, you recognize that it is full. It's full of all of your physical experiences, your emotional experiences, your intellectual experiences, and your spiritual experiences. I'd invite you to reach out in your mind's eye and pick up the vessel. And as you hold the vessel in your hand, tip it over a little bit and pour out all of your physical experiences in the last week, the last month, the last year, throughout your lifetime, allowing those experiences to drop to the ground and be absorbed by the earth, to be recycled. And now tip the vessel a little bit more and pour out your emotional experiences in the last week, the last month, the last year, for your entire lifetime. Allowing those experiences to pour out onto the ground and be recycled. And now tip the cup even more, pouring out all of your intellectual experiences. The last week, the last month, the last year, your entire lifetime. Allowing them to be recycled into the earth. And now tip the vessel all the way over, pouring out everything else that's in the vessel. All of your spiritual experiences, good or bad, ones you liked, ones that scared you. Letting them all flow out and be recycled into the earth until the last drop drops out of your vessel. And now set the vessel back on the surface that it was setting on. And wait. Wait for Spirit to fill your vessel. And as Spirit comes to fill your vessel, the creative force of the universe pours in health. Health for your physical body. And next, pours in joy. Joy for your emotional energy body. And next pours in clarity. Clarity for your intellectual energy body. And finally pours in love. Love for your spiritual energy body. Spirit keeps pouring it in and overflowing. And now pick up the vessel. As you bring it close to you, you look down and see that health, joy, clarity, and love are all mixed together, intermingled. Bring the vessel to your lips and pour it down, drinking down health, joy, clarity, and love. And when you've emptied the vessel, set it back on the surface. And then turn your attention inward, feeling inside of you the radiating essence of health, joy, clarity, and love. Allowing it to expand, encompassing your whole being, all the parts of you, and then radiating out into the world. And now, as you feel the essence of health, joy, clarity, and love in the core of your being and radiating out into the world, I'd invite you to gently re-engage your physical senses, your sense of hearing, sense of smell, sense of touch, sense of taste, and finally your sense of sight. Gently opening your eyes, seeing the world through these beautiful, beautiful qualities of spirit. Thank you.